The video you are going to watch now is part of a thesis and an essay. Almost nothing that will be said has the official signature of astronomical science. So, when it comes to new and purposeful ideas, you could include this video in the field of science fiction. The author. We know that the Earth and the Sun occupy the same dimension of time, which we call the present. According to Stephen Hawking, the Earth would enter the Sun's future light cone after 8 minutes. If the Sun were to go out now, we would only know about it after that time interval. As the Earth would be traveling in space outside this cone of light, and therefore towards our tragic future, this cone would not exist in practice. At least, until the Earth was hit by darkness. This suggests that within the future light cone, time would either have a negative nature, or it would result from a negative curvature of space. This curvature would be holding time in our future, or until the star's death event manifests on Earth. If we compare the behavior of space with that of a spring, conduct normally adopted by physicists, when this spring is stretched, the force will point in the opposite direction to that of its stretching. As noted in the case of the Sun, this stretching would be able to retain time during the formation of the curvature of space. So, even though space curves in our physical reality, without the direct measurement of time, it would remain virtually flat. The reason is that space would depend on a messenger to communicate the event of its curvature, which, in this case, would be the light of the Sun. This messenger is the one that presents a behavior similar to that of a spring, because the light would execute a simple harmonic movement with these elastic characteristics. As in the future, it would not be possible to separate the behavior of space from its own messenger. The two merge into one thing. If you want to talk about space, you'll have to talk about light. If space could speak for itself, we wouldn't have to wait 8 minutes to know about the Sun's death. The retention of time suggests happening in our future, because light would also be transiently retained in the direction of the arrow of time. In theory, this retention would result from the light packaging process, or from its quantization. The process that will result in the formation of photons of light emitted by our star does not take time. Without its prior packaging, light could not be captured by our limited senses or even by our equipment. Analyzing the graph of the Sun's future light cone, it can be seen that due to the retention of time of 8 minutes, the arrow of time seems to invert in the position of the observer. It would stop pointing to the future and start pointing to the observer's past. The virtual displacement from the zero mark of time to the position of the observer relativises time. Thus, from the point of view of the Sun, the Earth would be seen with the appearance it had in the past. For Earth, the Sun would be in the past when it could be seen. The dependence of space on its messenger tells us that, even if space were to curve in the future, it would present itself by light as if it were flat, due to the timelessness of the photon formation process. This would not be a problem of space, but of our sensory perception. Due to retention of the time required for the apparent displacement of light within the Sun's cone, ground zero would shift to the observer's position on Earth. Thus, one can think that light would have been leveled at its maximum and minimum energy extremes during the formation of the curvature of space. This would be the case, for example, of ultraviolet and infrared. as the counting of time would start for the observer and not with the star. The two energy extremes would start from the same moment in time. In this case, making use of the colors of the Maxwell spectrum to assess the position of the stars and the time that separates us is the same as ignoring the curvature of the space that shelters the stars and ignoring the uncertainty of their position or speed. This problem becomes insurmountable as we have no other tool at our disposal than the cosmic microwave background. This radiation can only be traced back to the past, not the future. The hypothetical flattening of the spectrum by retaining time in our future leads us to circular and uniform motion, as light tells us that the sun's future light cone would be straight. If you flatten the straight cone over its base, you would be left with a perfect circle. This would happen to the sun's future light cone if you took time out. Is that without time, the waves could not superimpose each other. For physicists, the sun would act as a poinsettia, emitting circular waves of light, with the star placing itself at the center of this circle. These circular waves would be similar to those generated when you throw a stone into a lake. When we add the time as one dimension, they overlap each other, forming a three-dimensional cone. This cone would be virtual, because it could not be described directly. It would result from the superposition of waves over the passage of independent moments of time. This creates an insurmountable difficulty in directly characterizing the elliptical motion. By the model of circular waves of light emitted by the sun, the planet would be reached by the light when it was already polarized. This is suggested by the fact that one could not separate the ultraviolet from the infrared from circular waves, as they would all leave the sun with the same speed of 300,000 kilometers per second. As the circular orbit would represent a state of rest of the waves, a planet executing such an orbit would not be able to show its movements towards and away from the sun. That is, if we use the Doppler of light and its blue or red shift to assess Jupiter's position, there would be no perihelion or aphelion, respectively. This is really consistent with what is observed in practice, because, for those looking from the Earth, the sun seems to move on the ecliptic in circular and uniform motion. The apparent movement of the star in the sky during the day would be a reflection of the orbit of the planet itself being passed on to the star by the observer. This gives us the impression that we are over the center of the universe, as all the stars appear to move in the night sky in a circular and uniform motion.